Today, we are going to untangle one of the most complicated and, frankly, violent family trees in history, the dynasty of Herod the Great. And this isn't just some dusty history lesson, okay? Their paranoia, their ambition, all the bloodshed, it directly sets the stage for the entire world of the New Testament. So let's dive in.
So if you've ever read the Gospels, you've probably had this thought. The name Herod just keeps popping up, but it's referring to different people, and it can get super confusing. You've got the Herod who wants to kill baby Jesus, then there's the Herod who executes John the Baptist. Are they the same guy? Well, the short answer is no, not at all. And figuring out who's who is actually the key to unlocking the whole political world of the Gospels.
I mean, at its heart, this whole thing is a story about raw power and some serious family dysfunction. We're talking about a king so paranoid, he literally murdered his own children. And we're going to talk about his granddaughter, whose ambition sparks a scandalous marriage and, ultimately, leads to the death of a prophet. This family's drama is the engine that drives some of the biggest moments in the Bible. Okay, so it all starts with this one guy, Herod the Great. He was the Roman-appointed king of Judea, and his entire reign was defined by these two, completely opposite forces. On one hand, he was this incredible builder, doing these magnificent projects like renovating the entire temple in Jerusalem. But on the other hand, he had this brutal, paranoid obsession with getting rid of any threat to his power, especially if that threat came from inside his own family. And what's so wild about this timeline is how perfectly it shows that contradiction. You see the start of his incredible temple project, a legacy that's going to last for generations, but then look at how his reign ends. In 7 BC, he executes 2 of his own sons. And then, in 4 BC, just days before he dies himself, he executes his oldest son, Antipater. This wasn't just a one-time thing. This was the foundation of his entire dynasty. Now, to try and make his rule seem more legitimate, Herod made a really brilliant political move. He married Mariamne I. She was a princess from the Hasmonean dynasty, the heroic family of the Maccabees, who were a huge deal. This marriage gave him a claim to Jewish royalty, and they had 2 sons who embodied this powerful new bloodline. But as we just saw, even that royal blood was no protection from their father's paranoia.
So let's just be really clear about the body count here, just among his own heirs. Antipater, his firstborn from his first wife, Doris, executed. Then Alexander and Aristobulus IV, his sons with the Hasmonean princess, both executed, charged with treason. In this family, power wasn't something you just inherited. It was something you had to survive. And this right here, this is the crucial link that connects all that first-generation violence straight to the Gospels. Remember the name Aristobulus IV? The executed prince? His death wasn't the end of his family's story. See, he had a daughter, and her name was Herodias. Keep that name in your back pocket. She inherited all of her family's royal blood and, as we're about to see, all of their ruthless ambition.
So after Herod the Great dies, his will is a complete mess, full of last-minute changes because of his paranoia. So Rome has to step in, and they officially break up his kingdom, splitting it between his surviving sons. And this division is so important because it creates the exact political territories where Jesus and John the Baptist are going to live and carry out their ministries. Okay, for our story, 2 of his sons are the ones you really need to know. First, there's Archelaus. He got the most important territory, Judea, which included Jerusalem. And he immediately gets a reputation for being incredibly brutal. Then you have his half-brother, Antipas. He was given Galilee and Perea, a different territory, a different ruler, and that made all the difference for the people living there. And this is where the history clicks right into the pages of the New Testament. In the Gospel of Matthew, when Joseph is bringing his family back from Egypt, he hears that Archelaus is now the guy in charge of Judea, and it says he was afraid. This was not some irrational fear. Archelaus had already slaughtered thousands of people in Jerusalem. The guy was terrifying, and the threat was very real. And here is the punchline. Warned in a dream, Joseph completely changes his plans. He avoids Archelaus' territory of Judea altogether, and instead settles the family up north in Galilee. And who is a ruler of Galilee? Herod Antipas. So that one decision, based on the violent reputation of one of Herod's sons, is what determined that Jesus would grow up in Nazareth. And it set him on an eventual collision course with the other brother, Antipas. Okay, remember that name I told you to keep in your back pocket? Herodias? The ambitious granddaughter of Herod the Great. Well, she is back, and she is about to create a massive royal scandal that's going to have fatal consequences for the biggest prophet in all of Israel. All right, the family tree here gets a little twisted, but the scandal itself is pretty straightforward.
Herodias was originally married to her uncle, Herod Philip. Then her other uncle, Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee, comes to visit them. Well, he starts an affair with her, with his own brother's wife. He then goes and divorces his own wife so that he can marry Herodias. Now, according to Jewish law, this was a massive scandal, a totally unlawful union.
So this very public sin by the ruler of Galilee, it did not go unnoticed. There was this fiery prophet who had come out of the wilderness, preaching repentance and drawing these huge crowds. His name was John the Baptist, and he was not the kind of guy who was afraid to speak truth to power. John publicly, directly, and repeatedly called out Antipas for the marriage. And this wasn't just him muttering about it. As his quote shows, it was a public challenge to the king's legitimacy. And, while Antipas might have been a little conflicted about it, Herodias was furious. She saw John as a direct threat to her power and her position. This whole conflict comes to a head at a huge, lavish birthday party for Antipas. John the Baptist is already locked up in prison, but Herodias has not forgotten her grudge. Not for a second. She's just waiting for the perfect moment, and this banquet is going to be the stage for her revenge. And her opportunity arrives in the form of her own daughter, Salome. She performs a dance for Antipas and all his guests, and he is just blown away. He is so delighted, and probably pretty drunk, that he makes a terrible, terrible mistake. Right there, in front of all his powerful friends, Antipas makes this big, rash, public promise. He tells Salome she can have anything she wants. Anything, up to half his kingdom. He has absolutely no idea he's just walked straight into a trap laid by his own wife. So Salome goes to her mother, Herodias, who tells her exactly what to ask for. The girl walks back to the king and makes this horrifying request. Give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter. Antipas is trapped. He made a public oath. He has to give the order. And just like that, Herodias gets her bloody revenge. So as we start to wrap this up, it becomes really clear, doesn't it? These aren't just a bunch of random, disconnected stories. The paranoia of Herod the Great, the way his kingdom was divided, the brutality of Archelaus, and the scandalous ambition of Antipas and Herodias, it all weaves together into one long story. It's the political world that the Gospels were born into. Yeah, this little chart really puts it all together. You've got Archelaus, the son whose cruelty pushed Jesus to Galilee. You have Antipas, the son who ruled Galilee and then murdered the prophet. Then there's Herodias, the granddaughter, whose ambition was the engine for that murder. And finally, Salome, the great-granddaughter, who was the instrument of her mother's revenge. It's all connected. And that's really the main thing to take away from all this. Understanding this deadly dynasty is absolutely crucial. Their personal dramas, their political schemes, they created the specific dangers, the geographical lines on the map, and the moral battles that Jesus and John the Baptist had to face. It wasn't just background noise, it was the very air they breathed. So the next time you read about Joseph being afraid, or you read the story of the death of John the Baptist, you'll know this deep, violent, and complicated family history that's simmering just beneath the surface. And it leaves us with one final thought, really. How does knowing all of this whole web of paranoia and power, change the way you read those familiar stories now?